So it was probably around 9 or 10, and my family was moving back to our hometown area from El Paso, where my dad was stationed on a base there. Our realtor, M, was showing us houses and decided upon showing us a house when it was just getting dark outside. So we pull up, and it's overgrown with bushes and ugly crabgrass. The sidewalk is uneven and jagged, even missing in some places. The white siding is pretty much brown by this point, with tree branches overhanging almost every inch of the roof, so all you can see is this cave-like entrance into the front door. M informs us, oh yeah, it's been on the market for years, and there's no electricity, so we will be seeing it in the dark. We go inside, and the sight that hits us is remarkably depressing. There's broken picture frames and glass all over the floor. Red splotches of some sort of powder are covering everything. A very, very large chest is in the center of the living room, about 5 feet in the front of the front door. And there is the room's one single intact photo frame, with a half-ripped picture of a family inside of it, a boy and his mom. Sitting on top of it in almost perfect condition, except one crack in the glass. The house smells like something old and wet, yet fresh and rotting at the same time. No one noticed the smell but me. Now, me being the scaredy cat I am, I was ready to skedaddle. My parents didn't want to be rude to M, so we continued to see the house. We move into the hallway of the living room, and the attic door with the ladder going up to it is down and wide open, like a mouth with a staircase leading to it. My dad shuts the attic and decides we should take a look at the garage. The door into the garage is directly in front of us, off the hallway. We open the door, and this is where shit gets real. Now, y'all remember when M told us there was no electricity and we would be seeing the house in the dark, right? The singular light bulb in the garage was glowing blue. Not a bright iridescent blue by any means, but a sickly dim blue that was just bright enough to illuminate the walls and floor. My parents and M both made a comment how that was weird and what could cause that. Oh, I really don't know, huh? Strange. I couldn't care less because what I was staring at was worse than any creepy light that was working when it shouldn't have been. There was something inside the garage. It looked like a human, or maybe what used to be a human, but it appeared wet. Its skin kind of looked like if you grabbed it, it would just slip right off. I could see veins through the skin, which was so pale it seemed almost see-through. This thing was emaciated. I could see all its ribs, I could see hip bones. Its arms and legs consisted of just enough fat in the thighs and upper arms that you could tell that they were not just sticks slapped on a lump of flesh. The neck was just long enough to appear proportionally weird, and the head was turned to look straight at me. If you could even say it was looking, because where normal eyes would be, there were just holes. I don't remember a mouth. There was stringy clumps of hair and hanging from the tops and sides of its head, and I got the sick sense that it was happy to see me, almost as if it was thinking, finally. I watched this thing crawl on all fours, think hands and very long feet, not hands and knees, from the centre of the garage directly under the light bulb, cross in front of me and my family and M, and disappear into the wall. It kept its head turned on me the whole time, and I followed it with my eyes the whole time. I don't remember even feeling scared in the traditional sense, like, oh shit, what was that, I need to leave. I felt invited, I felt intrigued, and more than anything, I felt like it had been waiting on me. Just me. I felt like it was telling me, come in, make yourself at home. You're welcome here. I could hear my parents and M talking underneath the thoughts in my head about what this thing was thinking, what it wanted, what it was. Like I was somewhere else and it was just me and this thing. My parents decided they were thoroughly creeped out though, and without seeing the rest of the house, we left. They told M they weren't interested, and that was that. We fired her shortly after because she made a habit of showing us abandoned houses in the pitch dark. I was the only person who saw the thing, But my parents, after thinking I was asleep in the car on the way home, started talking about how once they opened the garage door, they felt like they were trespassing, like someone was watching them. It felt colder all of a sudden than the rest of the house. It smelled like rotted meat, and something just wasn't right about that blue light. My ex-girlfriend, while dating, she claimed that she often seen or talked dead people in her dreams whenever she slept at new places, and that often interrupted her sleep. It always happens on the first night, never twice at the same place. I didn't take it seriously because that could just be her imagination. The first night she came over to my apartment, we slept there together. In the next morning, she said there was an old man in her dream, looked at her and said nothing, but she could feel the sadness through his eyes. I didn't care much. Another time, we went to my hometown and we slept in my own room there. In the next morning, she said she saw a little girl standing in the dark looking at our bed. The little girl seems confused with the "who are you" eyes looking at her. This time my ex-girlfriend couldn't tell if she saw the little girl in her dream or if it was in real life. She didn't remember anything after that and simply woke up in the morning. It's just too realistic to be a dream to her, she said. This time got me concerned. The truth is, I do have a sister. She died before she was born. My mother and I lived in that house since I was a toddler. If my sister was alive, she would live in the same house with us. Anyway, I thought it was just a coincidence with my ex-girlfriend's imagination. Life goes on. A few years later, we broke up. One day, I went back to the old apartment to meet some friends. This time, I learned that indeed there was an old man who painfully died a long time ago. My apartment was built on the very same place where the old man died. Remember what my ex-girlfriend said after her first night here? Made me think. Was it really a coincidence? The old man, the little girl, both did exist in the past. Another side story. My mother and I moved to America not too long after that. A few days before we left the house, my mom had a dream. In her dream, my little sister, already a toddler at that time, was begging her not to leave her. We moved to America and sold the house. I consider myself more as an atheist. I neither believe nor deny the supernatural. I don't have evidence for both and choose to live my life that way. But my ex-girlfriend, the one I loved so much, left me with this story I can never forget. When I was 3, my grandmother, on the maternal side, died of a heart attack, I believe. While at the funeral, the adults were outside talking, smoking cigarettes, etc. Myself, my older brother, and another family member close to our ages were told to stay inside to keep us out of conversation we didn't need to hear, according to my parents. Well, the other family member convinced my brother that locking me in the viewing room, with those red lights over the coffin on, was a good idea. Once they locked me in, the other family member called through the door that Grandma needed to take me with her because I was her favourite. I screamed and cried as loud as my little self could, and some adults took me outside to my parents. I was told that they were just playing, and that even though Grandma loved me, she was never going to take me away. Trying to soothe a very upset 3-year-old. Later that year, we moved 2 states away from there. One night in the new house, 4 years later, I woke up in the middle of the night. According to my mother, very unusual. I heard a song only my grandma sang to me. I sat up, looking around, and I see the lid on my old toy box opening by itself. Once it was fully open, I saw what looked like my grandma standing slowly from inside the box. She turned slowly, creepily, around to look at me. I was frozen in place. I couldn't cry, scream, or even move. She started walking towards me. She stopped close to the bed and said the name she called me. "I came to get you. You were always my favourite, and I want you with me now." Somehow I found my voice and I screamed. My mom came running in, and just before she got to my room, Grandma said, "I'll come back for you again," and vanished. My mother came in asking who I was talking to. I told her everything, and Mom let me sleep in the living room for a few nights while she got rid of my toy box. The toy box was the last thing Grandma gave me. I walked into my home office on Tuesday night to do some work around 9:30 p.m. My wife and dogs were in the bed around 9 p.m. When I walked into my office, I found that a drawer from my desk had been removed from its normal place and was lying in front of the doorway. It was moved about 2 feet out from where it would normally be, and then 5 feet over and placed on the ground. Its normal position is on the desk about 2.5 feet off the floor. What was odd was that the contents of the drawer were all still there, as if someone had removed it and held it from the bottom and set it down relatively gently, instead of just pulling it out of the desk and letting it fall. Time is sort of important because I left the house at 2 p.m. to attend to some meetings, and my wife had left earlier for work. The drawer was in the desk when I left. We both got round about 7 p.m. and had dinner and chatted before she decided to lay down earlier than normal. When I discovered the drawer out of place, the only time it could have happened was between 2 and 7, maybe 9 if this was silently performed. It wouldn't be the result of sleepwalking, since my wife probably wasn't asleep yet. She'd only just gone to lay down. Wanted to address this because someone else I told got really focused on sleepwalking, but no one was asleep yet. My wife said she didn't do it when I spoke with her. I don't think my dogs could have done it without making a mess. I didn't do it. My wife and I have no history of any sort of sleepwalking or paranormal experiences. This is a first for us. Also, nothing else in any room was disturbed or out of place. There was no sign of a break-in or anyone else being in our home. There have been no follow-up weird experiences. I'm an air conditioning and electrical contractor who works with several realtors in my area doing repairs on homes in escrow. I've been in more than one creepy vacant house. This was in late fall last year. By 4:30 it was already dark. The house was empty, but the lights were on and we proceeded to replace the furnace. My helper got a strange feeling, kind of odd, heavy feeling in the house, and I agreed that I was feeling weird. The house was about 30 years old in a typical subdivision in the North Valleys of Reno, Nevada. I made the comment that a couple of times that afternoon, I thought I'd heard footsteps down the hall. He said he had heard some too, but didn't say anything. We continued to finish up when he pointed down the hallway. There was a figure of a man, but only from the waist up, transparent, entering the front bedroom. We both saw it, and he called out, "Hey, you're not supposed to be here." We checked out the room, but it was empty, window locked. We looked throughout the house, but we were the only ones there. We picked up our hand tools fast and called it a day. It was all I could do to lock up the house fast enough and leave. Talking to the real estate agent the next day, letting him know we'd finished up and the permit inspection was set for the next week, I asked him if he had any history on the house. He explained that the former owner's daughter was selling the place. It seems her mother had died that spring of last year in the house, and a couple of months later, her father had shot himself in the bedroom. He then asked me why, and I said I was just curious. He then tells me his client had told him she had seen her father in the house while she was cleaning it out, and thought she was a little nutty. I just kind of uneasily chuckled. I never told him what we saw. Back in 2009, my brother was having trouble with his wife. He came to stay with us for a while. About 2 weeks later, my mother found him sitting, dead, in one of the living room chairs. Turns out it was from a heart attack. About a week later, we would find the kitchen back door wide open. This continued for a few months, about every other day. In the morning, the back door in the kitchen would be wide open to the backyard. One morning in particular stands out to me. It was about 5 a.m. and I went to the kitchen to make a pot of coffee. I was the only one up at the time. The coffee maker was next to the back door. The back door was closed when I started the coffee. When I came back 5 minutes later, the back door was wide open. I stood there for a second and said, "Are you here?" I distinctly heard his voice say, "Yes, I am." That was the only time I heard his voice after he passed. After a while, we started experiencing doors being locked. We would walk out of the front or back door and come back to find yourself locked out of the house. Car keys started to go missing, only to be found in strange places like the kitchen and bathroom drawers. After a few more months, everything settled down at the house, but I'm still convinced it was my brother's spirits hanging around to let us know he was still there. When I was younger, I was more perceptive to the paranormal. I have a few tales of ghosts and other spooky experiences. It's been a while since I've actually seen something. I occasionally get knocking on doors, missing items, or the occasional feeling I'm being watched when there's no one around. My parents' home is definitely haunted. It's older than the city they live in and at the border of an even bigger older city. We've had many experiences there in the 15 years they've lived there. We know the house is haunted by something. What it is, we're not sure. This experience isn't related to it, a different experience altogether. I don't know if this is considered a ghost, to be honest, because who we saw was technically still alive at the time. I think I was still in high school because I was doing homework on the dining room table. My dad and brothers were also in the room watching the TV we have in there. We rented a room in the house to a friend of the family, a large Mexican man. He was taking a shower in the bathroom that was next to the kitchen adjacent to the dining room. He did this every day after work at around the same time. Behind the kitchen was our den, which had the door to the backyard and my mother's garden. I remember my mom had gone out to the garden. It was getting dark, and my mum suddenly rushed in from the backyard and zoomed past us, and she went upstairs to their room. So fast we didn't see her face. I remember my dad and I looked at each other amused. He even asked, "What's her rush?" 2 minutes passed and the bathroom door opened. It was my mom. She had been the one in the bathroom taking a shower. Our tenants also walked into the house from work at the same moment. My dad immediately got up and went upstairs because obviously someone had broke in. There was no one upstairs. He checked every room. No one left the house either because we had a view of the front door. Our tenant didn't see anyone go out on his way up the street. It really freaked us out. A couple of hours later, we got a call that my aunt, my mom's older sister, had a stroke and was in a coma 2 hours earlier. My aunt looked a lot like my mom, same height and body build. She waited for us basically to travel to her city 6 hours away, to say goodbye and then passed away. We do have something in the house that occasionally mimics people. However, it never mimics someone who doesn't live there. Let me know if you want to read those stories. This was different though, because the thing always leaves you feeling uneasy after seeing it and usually doesn't move. She power walked across 4 rooms and up the stairs. My mom likes to think my aunt tried to say goodbye as she left our world. I like to think that too. I don't know if anyone else has had an experience like this, or if it's considered a ghost. My grandfather passed away when my mom was about 8 years old. He, unfortunately, met the end of his life when he was robbed and killed when he was going to his business very early in the morning. Now that we have that information, let's get into the paranormal experiences, starting with my mother. After my grandfather's passing, give or take 3 months, my great aunt went to visit my grandma and the kids. According to my mother, my great aunt was a loving and caring woman and had a great relationship with my grandparents. One night, while everyone was asleep, my mom woke to the sounds of my great aunt convulsing as if she couldn't breathe. With my mom being so young and unable to understand what was happening, woke up her older brother to tell him what was happening. My uncle went to my grandmother to wake her up, and once she went to check up on my great aunt, she announced that my great aunt had passed away. Now, you're probably wondering why I'm telling you this story. A few months prior to my grandfather's and great aunt's passing, they both had an agreement. The agreement being that whoever passes away first would come back for the other so that they can go to heaven together. For what my mom remembers, she said that when they both agreed to that, it was just a joke. But I guess my grandfather held his of the deal. Fast forward about 35 years. I was in the 4th grade, and during that summer, my mom and I decided to redo my room. After a long day of painting the walls, I had to sleep on the couch in the living room so the paint could dry. My parents' room is right next to the living room, and they offered to leave their door open since they were aware that I was afraid of the dark. That night, I had woken up at some odd hour, and when I turned over on the couch, I was able to see into my parents' room. To my surprise, I see a dark figure in the shape of a man on my mom's side of the bed. A part of me was scared, but the other part of me felt like I knew who this dark figure was. The dark figure was just looking at my mom with a very little I could see in their room, and it looked like the figure was going to lean over and touch my mom's arm. I whispered, "Leave her alone," and turned over, but when I looked back into my parents' room, the dark figure was gone. A few days later, my mom was looking through pictures and shows me one and says, "Oh look, this is what your grandpa looked like." Looking at the photo, I started realizing that the black figure that I thought I knew could have well been my grandfather. Now for my sister's experience, this one comes in the form of dreams. My sister has been stating that a few nights she's been having dreams where in these dreams she wakes up, and when she turns her head to look at the chair in her room, she sees my grandfather looking at her and her son. She says that he only looks at them and smiles. He never says anything to her, but just by his demeanour, she feels safe around him, as if to reassure her that everything is going to be okay. She's still confused as to why he goes to her every so often, and why he never says anything. I was probably 10 or younger when this happened. I was in my house, downstairs in the living room that connected to the kitchen, sitting on the couch in front of the TV. It was turned off. I remember seeing my reflection in the black mirror of the TV and thinking how creepy it was. I don't remember what, but I was playing with something, lost in focus, when suddenly the sun went down. All the lights were off, so it turned almost pitch black, and I was getting a little scared. There were 5 people living in my house at the time, my parents, sister, and grandmother and I, so the lights were always on. The house was always alive and rarely felt empty. Without telling me, my parents and sister had left the house, so it was unusually quiet and dark. Then I heard it. It was a distinct sound. High heel footsteps walking slowly toward me from the kitchen, getting louder and louder. With each step slowly inching closer and getting louder, the presence felt evil. It was getting so loud that I was absolutely horrified, frozen in terror for a few seconds, until I bolted out of the living room and up the staircase. The whole way up was pitch black, and the only light was coming from the cracks of my grandmother's bedroom door. I threw open the door and jumped into the bed next to her, utterly afraid of this evil, invisible woman in high heels. But she never bothered me with her high heels again, although later on she might have tried to scare me by singing in my vents, but that's a story for another time. I lived in this house a little over a year back in 2017. It was a white, two-storey house that was obviously old. Our landlords were an old Korean couple who left some items in the house when we were renting it. They included an old painting in the basement, a chest and a mannequin in the attic, which were both wet and smelled funky. I initially felt nothing weird about the house, and I didn't for a while. I've had some experiences beforehand, but not as bad as this house. So let's get to the interesting parts. Activity started to peak a few months into living there, and they were not positive one bit. One night, I was sleeping on the couch in my living room, watching TV. There was a walkway that led into the dining room, which I could see into from the left side, opposite of the staircase, which was on my right. Not a very big living room. We had an Alexa sitting on a little table in the dining room. The Alexa first lit up on its top ring and started playing what sounded like Mexican music. The music played for about 1 minute before completely stopping. The Alexa stayed lit for a few seconds, then turned off. During this time, I was both confused and also scared because no one said anything to activate the Alexa. This wasn't my last experience in the house. Another night in the living room, I heard footsteps coming from the staircase, and I heard a deep growl, like from an animal. I shut my eyes hard and tucked my blanket in to make myself feel safe, because I felt certain I would be attacked. But nothing came, only the intense feeling of being watched while I cowered in fear. Another night, I wanted to go up to use the bathroom. Coincidentally, the light switch for the stairs happened to be up the stairs, meaning I had to walk upstairs in the dark. We had a laundry chute built into the wall on the side. Because I saw nothing, I wasn't aware that the chute was wide open, which slammed shut, making a super loud clapping sound on the polished wood. Startled, I ran right back downstairs and cowered in my blanket on the couch. Whenever I would sleep in my room, I would hear footsteps lightly walking through the hall and making obvious creaks in the floor, always stopping at my bedroom door, every single night for a week. Each time I texted my dad to check, he would open his door and tell me no one was in front of my door. One incident happened when me, my dad, and brother came home to find boxed light bulbs shattered all over the basement floor. And another incident was when we came home at night, sat down, and heard a loud thud come from the basement. We called the police to investigate, and they found absolutely no one anywhere in the house. Freaky shit. I lived in this house from ages 2 to 13. It was a smaller bungalow. There were 3 small bedrooms down a long hallway that led to the living room. There was a finished basement with a concrete room, which was intended to be used for cold storage. I remember being absolutely horrified of this room. I always used to see shadows of a creature or human-like figure which appeared to be watching me whenever the door was left open. I would refuse to go anywhere near the room and would cry hysterically if I got too close. Additionally, whenever either of my parents went into the basement, I would stand at the top of the stairs screaming bloody murder, begging my parents to not go near the room and to return to the main floor. Upstairs, my room was directly across the small hallway from my parents. I would refuse to enter the hallway at dark, and my mom told me I often would wake up screaming and crying in the night, begging her to sleep in my bed with me, so the shadows wouldn't hurt me. In the living room, I remember playing or watching the TV. Out of the corner of my eye, I would always see an older couple with outfits that appeared to be from the 1800s. The man was wearing a top hat and a black suit that was shorter in the front and longer in the back. The woman was wearing a dress that was wide at the bottom and had a corset top. The couple would pace back and forth down the hallway, often stopping for a couple of seconds before turning around to pace the other way. However, every time I turned my head to confirm what my peripheral vision saw, they would disappear. Up until the day we moved at the age of 13, I refused to be alone in the house due to the grim feeling of being watched that I was overcome with anytime I entered the house. I would wait in the backyard for 2 hours until my father got home from work, so I didn't have to be home alone. Immediately after we moved, these feelings and my history of night terrors completely stopped. Fast forward a decade later, now I'm in my 20s. I was having lunch with my mom and her best friend when the topic of our old house came up in conversation. I began telling my mom about how eerie I felt as a kid living there, but quickly brushed it off as being a child with an active imagination when reflecting on the experience as an adult. However, my mom informed me she had the same feelings and odd experiences in that house, but never told me because she didn't want to scare me. My mom began to describe an old couple she would see walking down the hallway. I couldn't believe it. Finishing each other's sentences, we discussed the same couple, almost word for word with the description. My mom even told me she used to have a priest come over every couple of months while I was at school to bless the house. I still consider myself a bit of a skeptic, but it's really hard to explain my mom seeing the same couple as I did, despite never discussing them with each other.